Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for coming here to Reversapalooza. I'm really, really excited about it. We've been working on this for a couple of months, and I just wanted to get some housekeeping items out of the way first, and then we'll have an introduction. So, if you don't know where the restrooms are, go straight out these doors, right in front of the table where you got your name badges, go straight ahead, and on the left, that is where the bathrooms are. The Wi-Fi password is Nori 2018 in all caps. I've also wanted to introduce, if you guys haven't met the Nori Knots. Nori Knots is the term for the founders of Nori. Please stand up, all you founders. This is a great team, and I feel so grateful and appreciative to be working with them. Also, the advisors of Nori, can you please stand up? Please stand up. There we go, Bob Bett. Klaus is somewhere. Great, thank you. Be advised that we are recording the sessions and we are taking photos. We put advisories out there, I just wanted you to know that. Also, the setting for today. We are, if you might have seen our sign, it's a collaborative summit for climate change reversal. I think we're all here because we think that climate change is one of the most existential crises of our time and that we need to do something about it. So we can't do it alone. I know that Nori, we say our mission is to reverse climate change. We can't do that by ourselves. We need all of you here, and that's why we're really, really glad that you're here. So be collaborative and engage in the conversation. We really want these sessions to be a way of sparking new conversations and finding out like what are the things that we need to be focusing on so that we can achieve our goal together. So if you don't have a name card for your table, please go out and get one in the front. And you can use these during the sessions throughout the day and tomorrow to signal that you have a question. So you just put it up on its side, and then we'll bring you a mic and we'll make sure that your questions are answered as part of the panel session. Does that make sense? Cool. All right, so breakfast is over. If you want, grab some more coffee. We'll have a coffee break after our next session. But right now, I just wanted to introduce Amanda Ravenhill from the Buckminster Fuller Institute to introduce Nori. And we're really, really glad that Amanda's here. She was on one of our podcasts, and she's quite an impressive woman. So thank you, Amanda. How's that? Great. All right. So, just get this. Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda Joy Ravenhill. I'm currently honored to hold the position of the Executive Director of the Buckminster Fuller Institute. Prior to that, I was the co-founder and Executive Director of Project Drawdown, which we'll talk about in just a second. And I also serve on the board of the Regen Network and am an advisor for the Center for Carbon Removal, who's also here. Welcome to Spaceship Earth. So Buckminster Fuller was famous for many things, one of which is coining the term Spaceship Earth. He insisted that we all see ourselves as one global community, collaborating with our planet as we soar through space. So I was asked to provide a little context. I like to zoom all the way out before zooming in. So this little spaceship is traveling at 60,000 miles per hour around the sun. It's also spinning axially at about 1,000 miles per hour at the latitude that we're at right now. It's also following the sun as the sun orbits around the center of our galactic core at about 500,000 miles an hour. So I'd just like to show this perspective as it kind of reveals the dynamic nature of this spaceship, this living, watery spaceship that we call Earth and home.
So hopefully that shifted your paradigm just a little bit. That's what we're about at the Buckminster Fuller Institute. One, shifting paradigms through media and workshops, and then also we scale solutions and support on-the-ground entrepreneurs who are addressing the most critical needs of today. These are some of the kind of paradigm shifts that we talk about a lot in our work, and I won't go into them, but just wanted to kind of expose you to them briefly and get into one of Fuller's most famous quotes, which is that you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. And I think this is really important in the climate change space. If you fight the existing reality, you end up just kind of focusing on fossil fuel emissions, which, while very important, is just not the full picture. And what it leads us to is demonizing carbon, which is ridiculous because you all ate carbon for breakfast. We're made of carbon. Carbon is life. I like to say carbon is the element that holds hands and collaborates. It's a very collaborative element. And I think it's really important that we stop demonizing it and start to value this living planet as we ride through space on it. And one of the reasons I'm super excited about this conference and about blockchain is that it has the ability to both account for and govern this living health of our biosphere, seen here in phytoplankton around the world. So in addition to what Nori is doing with the carbon drawdown token, there's other great examples around that are kind of taking this natural capital and turning it into different contracts and new assets. One example is the Regen Network, and we were just talking about this a minute ago. In kind of prior industries, maybe they would have been seen as competitors, but because of the work that we're doing and because of the way the blockchain works, we're actually all cooperating, because as we continue to help solve, this way of taking this natural capital and making it into these more tangible tokens and contracts and assets, using the structured data and the democratic governance potential of the blockchain, we're actually able to support one another. So Regen Network is creating a dedicated ecological ledger and a smart contracting framework that unlocks different ways of kind of understanding and putting assets behind and linking them to natural capital. And this rewards ecological regeneration in the form of carbon drawdown, as one example, through forests, through agriculture, and through oceans. So why does this all matter? For decades, Buckminster Fuller was tracking what he called the dynamics of progress, or the inventory of world resources, human trends, and needs. There's a great 4-part book that he created in the 60s. And he tracked everything from iron and copper recirculation and hydroelectric power. There's also, he was tracking women's silk stockings and bathtubs that are in use. He was kind of tracking everything, just trying to see what was going on in the world and starting to track these, what he called the accelerating acceleration, which the 1950 mark, if you can see kind of the red date underneath in the bottom axis there, he was able to see this very beginning of this inflection point. And this is what we hear about a lot in the environmental and social justice movements, is this acceleration and kind of the sky falling, the world is ending. But we don't often hear about the acceleration of the strategies that are here to address these curves. And that kind of realization led Paul Hawken and I to start Drawdown about 4 years ago and create a whole coalition of people, hundreds of people around the world, to really see what is the future, what is the climate future that we want. So about 8 or 9 out of 10 articles that you'll find around climate change are around the future that we don't want. And you'll see across different disciplines. In psychology, they call it the availability heuristic. But basically, what you focus on is what you get. In psychology, it's the examples that you have available in your mind is the kind of path you will end up choosing. In the military, they teach Air Force pilots not to look at the target they don't want to hit. It's called a negative target attribution. If you look at it, you'll end up choosing it. And so we put this book together to say, let's hit this target instead. So it's 100 different solutions, 80 of which we were able to map, measure, and model over the next 30 years to see what the greenhouse gas and financial impact would be of the solutions. And there's a lot of different ways to slice this pie. If you add up all the food solutions, that becomes number one. If you add up educating girls and women's and family planning, that becomes number one. If you add up all the agroforestry, propagate, you'd be excited. That becomes number one. So there's a lot of different ways to slice the pie, but this is just a brief overview of the top 80 solutions here. And so what does drawdown mean? This is a sped up version of a 2006 model of CO2 in our atmosphere. And I like it because it shows that there's little drawdowns that happen every year. So drawdown is the peak in concentrations rather than emissions of our atmosphere. And you'll see it kind of peaks in the northern hemisphere winter months. And then as photosynthesis starts in the northern hemisphere where we have more land, there's actually this great drawdown. And we have the lowest amount of CO2 in the atmosphere around October. And then it starts to kind of come back again as the kind of annual cycle of death and decay of the photosynthesis happens. So I love watching this and really seeing that the Earth is alive and breathing, if you will. So these are the different 7 sectors that we looked at in drawdown. Drawdown doesn't just talk about taking carbon out of the atmosphere, it's also just mitigating emissions per a pretty aggressive business as usual. So we looked at, essentially, it ended up being 1,000 gigatons or 1 trillion tons over the next 30 years. It's interesting because this is 1 trillion tons, and also if you look at just the parts per million from 410 back down to 280, and just do like the simple math there, we need to take 1 trillion tons out of the atmosphere. That doesn't include the carbon that needs to come out of the ocean. But I find that number just handy when you're talking to people. It's about 1 trillion ton problem, and a couple different ways to slice that. So just really briefly, I'm going to go through a couple of the drawdown solutions. We're going to hear about a lot of different solutions in the next couple days, but here's a couple maybe you haven't heard of. This one is called A Cow Walks Onto a Beach. It's about feeding algae and kelp, other seaweeds, to livestock. And there's some recent research that was done that even if it's just 2% of the cow's feed, you can reduce up to 99% of the methane emissions from the cow, which is absolutely critical that we address. Those methane emissions now account for about 4 to 5% of greenhouse gases released into the world every year. Bamboo, another favorite, one of the fastest carbon sequesters, kind of partners that we have out there. Over the next 30 years, it has the potential to sequester 7.22 gigatons. Another favorite of mine is indigenous land management. This idea that the wild is actually very much tended to and gardened. The idea that the Amazon was very much planted by humans, that we are a beneficial species, and that by empowering and allowing indigenous land people to continue to manage their land, we can sequester, I think this is a really low estimate, 5.25 gigatons over the next 30 years. Another favorite of, I know some people in this room, are perennial grasses and perennial plants in general. They have longer roots, and you can kind of just see right there how much carbon they would be able to hold. We didn't run the numbers on this, but just a good visual there. This is marine permaculture, a newer practice, so we weren't able to run the numbers on it, but this idea that we can reforest the ocean. So there's a project called Green Wave that recently won the Buckminster Fuller Challenge, and they do restorative ocean farming. And they said that if we farm the ocean the size of the state of Washington around the world, we would be able to feed the entire world with the kelp and the shellfish that would come off of that ocean farming. So that's really critical as we start talking about land use changes and how much room we have to actually bring carbon back into the soil and what we have to shift on the land. And then finally, I know a big favorite of many people in this room is regenerative agriculture. We were able to run the numbers on this. You can disregard that 4.4 number. It's the 23.15 gigatons. Again, this one, you can slice the pie in a lot of different ways if you add compost and biochar and some of the other agroforestry solutions that we looked at. This becomes number one as well. So just a really brief intro into all of that. Hope that kind of awoke you into some new ways of seeing the carbon cycle. And I'll just finish by summing it up as Buckminster Fuller says so well. It is now highly feasible to take care of everybody on Earth at a higher standard of living than any have ever known. It no longer has to be you or me. Selfishness is unnecessary. War is obsolete. It's just a matter of converting our high technology from weaponry to livingry. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. That was awesome. You touched on a lot of really good points that carbon cycles and that what we need to do is focus on how do we get more carbon back into the ground, and regenerative farming is a big piece of that. That's why on Friday we have 2 sessions focused mainly on soil and storing carbon back in the soil and verifying that it's still there. So before we get started with an introduction from our wonderful CEO, Paul Gambill, we're going to show you a treat, which is our explainer video that explains what Nori is. I'm really excited about it. I'm excited about everything. It's really cool. So you guys are seeing it for the first time. Feels special.
Global climate change. The dangerous result of excess carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. Most efforts to combat climate change focus on reducing emissions, like through energy efficiency and renewable energy. But reducing emissions is simply not enough. Even if we cut emissions to 0, there will still be too much CO2 in the atmosphere. We must actually remove carbon dioxide from the air in order to truly reverse the impacts of climate change. Nori is working to do just that. Nori is on a mission to reverse climate change. To restore a healthy climate, we need to remove 1.5 trillion tons of CO2 from the atmosphere. Luckily, there are ways to do this. Planting trees, regenerative farming, even capturing CO2 directly from the air. These are happening on a small scale, but we need to do more. This is where Nori comes in. Nori is building a system that empowers carbon dioxide removal. We're bringing people, businesses, and entrepreneurs together in a single virtual marketplace. A marketplace that encourages the reversal of climate change without the hurdles that exist in today's markets. Nori makes it easy for people who remove CO2 to get paid for their work, and for new CO2 removal technologies to grow. And because our marketplace is backed by blockchain, it provides an easy, transparent, and verifiable way to make it happen. Nori believes the solution to climate change is a combination of technology and incentives, and that's what we do. With Nori, everyone can make it their mission to reverse climate change. Find out more about Nori and the Nori Marketplace at nori.com.
So everybody can make it their mission to reverse climate change. Do you guys feel empowered to reverse climate change? Yes. Oh, come on. Like, do you feel empowered to reverse climate change? Yes! Hell yeah. Okay, great. So I'd love to introduce Paul Gambill, our CEO of Nori, to talk about what we're doing and our mission here. Paul, there you go.
Hi, can you all hear me? Okay, great. So first off, thank you to Amanda for that introduction. I met Amanda about 6 weeks ago. We went down there to record an episode of our Reversing Climate Change podcast. And for those of you who don't know or haven't listened to it, the podcast is hosted by Ross and Christoph, and I just kind of sit there as the producer and chime in occasionally. And I mostly just watching the sound levels the whole time. And while they were talking, I was staring at this giant bookcase behind Amanda that had all of Bucky's, excuse me, ran up here from the back of the room. that book, has had all of Bucky's books and all books by his contemporaries, and I was just itching the whole time to get up and go look at them. And then after we finished recording the session, I basically ignored the rest of the conversation and was just browsing through. So it was a real treat to go get to visit and see that. So thank you, Amanda. This is really exciting for me. About 3 years ago, I read this article in a magazine about how climate scientists were becoming very depressed because no one was listening to them. And that seemed really bad. And at the time I was working on a small business that wasn't really going anywhere, and I wanted to work on something bigger, and I wanted to work on something that would inspire an amazing team of people to work on it with me. And this seemed like an absolutely perfect fit. So I'm an engineer by training, and I think about problem solving in terms of how to actually solve the problem rather than just make things less bad. So how do we actually solve climate change? Amanda just talked about it. It's actually sort of simple arithmetic. We've put a lot of greenhouse gases up in the atmosphere, and we need to pull them back down and store them somehow. So that's what we're going to be talking about here today. We're building a carbon removal marketplace. And it's sort of a tricky thing to stand up a two-sided marketplace. On the one hand, you have suppliers, and on the other hand, buyers. And so in our case, today we're talking about suppliers such as farmers practicing regenerative agriculture, or buyers such as corporations that want to negate the CO2 emissions in their operations or supply chain. And we're going to talk to you a lot about our plans and how we have a bunch of innovations that are going to improve upon the existing carbon markets. But what I really want to do for you right now is paint a picture of the future of carbon removal. In the future, carbon removal is going to be automatic and simple and happen invisibly in the background. Imagine you are riding in an Uber or a Lyft, and at the end of your ride, an alert asks you if you want to have a sponsor pay for negating the emissions of that ride. Or imagine you drive your car up to a gas pump, and after you fill it, in the same transaction, you can pay to purchase carbon removal certificates that will negate the emissions from that tank of gas. Or, and this is my favorite example, imagine you're playing a mobile game about environmental restoration, and for every in-app purchase you make in that game, a portion of that purchase goes towards purchasing Nori carbon removal certificates. It's really important that we do this. We're building the infrastructure to make all of this happen. For the software people in the room, I'm talking about a simple API to reverse climate change. It's important that we make this simple and automatic and invisible in the background, because that's the only way that we can build this up to any sort of scale that is actually going to make any sort of impact on climate change. And we at Nori talk about this all the time. We know that it's not just us. We're not going to be the only ones solving this. But our hope and our vision is to inspire an entire generation of new entrepreneurs creating new value, new products, and new jobs in a brand new carbon removal industry that's working together to rise towards this global climate change challenge. So that's what we're trying to work towards. And our plans are still really early right now. And the most important thing for us out of this conference is to get feedback from all of you. That's why we've asked you all to come to this. We're still making decisions about how do we go about verifying that the carbon dioxide has been removed? How do we build the marketplace so that it actually serves your needs? So please, throughout the day, give us feedback when you have it. We want to hear it. We want to incorporate this. We want to build a marketplace that works for you and works for the rest of the market. So thank you all very, very much for coming to this. And I also want to give a very emphatic thank you to Alessandra and Katie and Christoph, who did all the heavy lifting to make this happen. So with that, thanks very much, and please enjoy the rest of the conference.